I'm Alex Southey, here begging you to agree if I'm a bird, you're a bird. All right? And secondly, I'd like to talk about the irrefutable evidence I have that the moon is made of cheese. What cheese? Gruyere when it's over France. I can see your underpants. We've got a great show coming up. I'm trying to get in the habit of actually saying the person's name, even though it's in the title. So this is Josh Van White. He's a local Toronto artist, and I am Alex Von Southey, and this is Your Worst Song. Maybe leaving legally have to tell you I'm recording, so
yeah.
I love the albums in the back to start off with, especially Ram. Not enough people talk about it.
Oh, it's it's probably the best solo Beatle record, I think.
I agree.
I think someone told me it was Fred Armisen says it's the best Beatles record, period.
Oh, that's
which
funny.
I think that's a pretty tall thing to say, but
there's a conversation to be had about it though.
Oh yeah, there's so many good songs on it. Let's see, what's Monkberry Moon Delight?
Oh,
that's
yeah.
The one that's so good.
That might as well be a metal song. He's
yeah, screaming in that one, and about nonsense too.
Yeah.
It's great.
I love it. It's such in so many ways, it's so clearly an at-home project, which I know was the point, but it has that vibe. What a nonsense rap song is. That's basically what that is. What's the one right behind you?
Paralytic Stalks.
I've never heard of that.
Of Montreal. It's
okay, yeah.
It's one of my top 3 favorite albums of all time.
I know of Montreal, but I don't know any of their albums or music or anything.
Oh man, okay. You should listen to this one. This one gets more experimental. There's a 9-minute sound collage at one point.
Cool.
But if you want to get into Of Montreal, I would suggest Hissing Fauna or You the Destroyer is the name of the album. That's their big one from 2007. Kind of the most commercially popular, but it's very good. It's an 80-minute album, so it's pretty long, but it's good.
Are they, is that a big enough water glass for you, or you need a bowl? That's too funny.
I've worked in kitchens long enough. I need a liter container, otherwise I'm it's not. Why am I wasting my time?
Yeah, what is this, for ants?
Exactly.
Wait, what was I just going to ask? Oh, yeah, maybe this is a stupid question, but are Of Montreal Canadian, or is that just a funny little name?
That's just a funny name. They're actually from Athens, Georgia.
Those bastards. As if they don't have a great name, Athens, right in front of them.
I know, right? They were part of the Elephant Six Collective, if you're familiar with that.
Is that an Athens-based thing or a Montreal-based thing?
It was an Athens-based thing. Oh. It's Neutral Milk Hotel.
Oh, okay. I know that.
There was they were a part of that.
I didn't even know that they were from there. I associate Athens, Georgia, beginning and ending with REM, basically.
Oh, really? There's also B-52s, I think.
I openly am wrong. I am wrong. But they're just the only ones that I think about.
No, that's totally fair. I think they are famously from Athens, Georgia. But there's a handful of indie bands from the late 90s, early 2000s that are all Athens, Georgia.
Okay, interesting.
Originally, the main person from Of Montreal, it's pretty much just one guy. But he's from somewhere in Florida, and then he moved to Athens and then started up the band.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Florida to Athens. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so stoked. This is fun.
yeah. Most people who I've talked to enjoy the premise, which is good.
I feel it's definitely a very musicians podcast.
Yes,
but it definitely would have wider appeal beyond that. But I think definitely people that are in the local Toronto music scene are I want to hear what everyone I know about wants to say.
Exactly. I've asked other people for recommendations, and it's all their peers. So they just want to hear the shit from their friends and be like, yes, That's so funny.
Because no one ever talks about what song they like of theirs the least.
No.
So it's like what? You don't ask that question to anyone. It's kind of like, it's almost taboo, but not really. But yeah.
And it doesn't mean you dislike it. You decided to put it out. It's released, but maybe it just failed for some reason. So we can get to that later. But why don't you talk just a bit about how you entered the Toronto scene then?
Yeah, so I'll backtrack a little bit beyond,
whatever,
before the Toronto scene. So I went to school. I went to Trent. So I was in Peterborough. So I was in the Peterborough music scene for a few years.
Which, for people who don't know, is a legitimately, I would say, thriving university music scene.
It's quite good. Yeah, like for university students, there's definitely a good amount of either solo artists or musicians coming out of there. The one thing I will say about it is primarily folk and punk. And there's not, I wouldn't say there's not a lot of room for anything in between, but there's not a lot of artists in between.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Those Peterborough kids, they go hard or they want to be put to sleep.
Yeah, it's very strange because they are kind of opposites, but it's funk or poke. Funk or poke?
You just invented a new genre, I think.
Yeah, it's very polka based. But so so I was in a band starting in like 2018, I think, is when we put out our album. Yeah, I would say, I guess we were a band before that, but we didn't really have much going on. But we were like a very either Brit poppy or like classic rock influenced little group.
I don't think I even knew you were in a band. Okay.
Yeah. So it was my roommate and I kind of started it. And for the longest time when we would play shows, we just do we each have an acoustic guitar and we would play our songs that way. Mm-hmm. And then eventually our friend he also plays guitar, but we asked him to do bass. He started doing bass for us. And then it was kind of like we had a couple different drummers hop in for us from time to time. But yeah, so we kind of had a band and then we recorded an album. I recorded the album in my apartment. Mm-hmm. I would record most of the parts myself, like any of the MIDI stuff would just be me. And then I would go to any of my band members and be like, okay, I just need you to record the bass for this song. And it would take a couple hours and I just take it back and go back into my little hole of a room and keep mixing stuff until we had an album. So we put out an album in 2018 and it was, I think some of it still holds up kind of, I'm kind of happy with it. But then we all graduated in 2018 also. So we released an album, had a release party, and then disbanded and never got together again.
Like leaving the scene of a crime.
Yeah, essentially. And so our one drummer by the end, the drummer on the album, he was from Russia. So I don't know where he is now. My roommate and singer.
This is not a political episode, all right? No.
My roommate and the singer of the band was living in Mississauga for a while, and now he's moved back home to Thailand. So he's there. And then the bassist is up in Wawa, Ontario, but he's also kind of all around because he's a firefighter doing the forest fires. So he's all over the place. Yeah. So it's not even maybe we're in the same vicinity, we can get back together. It's not happening.
No. You have to have a world tour to even meet each other.
Exactly. Yeah. But so that was our band. And then after I graduated, I moved to Toronto after a couple months of looking for jobs. And then I very slowly just started being I can just record solo stuff. And that's how I gradually got in the music scene. But I didn't actually get involved with performing in Toronto until only a couple of years ago when I went to the Imperial Open Mic. Really, that's my first forte getting into the community there, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Was it a weird time between when the band disbanded and when you started having more of an uptick of making your music and playing live again? Was that just a weird dormant period?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I did put out, and we will get to it, I did put out an album under a different name as a solo artist. And then I had a weird phase, not a weird phase, but I recorded just a handful of very short instrumental pieces and then put those out under a completely different name as well. Cause I'm I don't really associate myself too much with it, but I think they sound cool. So I'll put them online so you can listen to them. But it's kind of they're like Gorillaz meets Plantasia is how I would describe that. Like,
okay.
It's like 12 songs, but they're all like a minute and a half tops each, so it's still kind of an EP. But yeah.
Cool, okay, that's interesting.
It's pretty fun.
It's not funk and poke?
It's not funk and poke, no.
Oh,
but yeah, so like it was kind of dormant because it was just like me just recording everything myself, but I didn't know if I want to put it out, or like I didn't know if I want to perform it live or how I would. And then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, well, I think I put out the big album while COVID was happening. I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to actually be able to perform this. And then by the time things opened up, I kind of was moving on to a different sort of sound. Like it was kind of a transitionary period. Honestly, the album I put out is a transitionary period between my rock band I was in and the more like synthy poppy stuff I've moved into. So it's kind of like a weird mix of things, and I don't know how I would have done it live. Really, it would have been a lot to be able to figure out.
Well, it seems like if you said that you went from that type of what you were doing with your band in Peterborough to the synth pop stuff you're doing, or synth rock, synth pop stuff you're doing now, indie. It would be hard to imagine the line, but you just described the line very. It's sometimes maybe that experimental period that actually goes nowhere. I'm using air quotes for people listening. You need that space. It served its purpose as a transitional pace. It didn't need to be anything else.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, because I think it was, and we can talk about it if you want. There is one song on that album I put out that's
is
like
that the one that you've chosen?
No, it is. The song I've chosen is on that album, but there is one song on that album that I really liked, and it's leaning a lot more into the synth stuff. And I think that was like the key, being like, oh, this sounds good. Like I can make this work. And that kind of, I think, was the motivating factor into changing, like shifting my sound over to closer to that. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can get to that in a little bit, but I do want to first go back to performing live. I mean, you already talked about the pandemic that obviously put it was the thorn in the side, to put it mildly, of artists and venues, because nothing could happen. So when we all did come out of that, I want to talk about your live performances. What was, you can choose best or worst live performance thus far? I guess it could be pre-pandemic, but I just am thinking about it more recently.
Honestly, I think it would have to be pre-pandemic, because since the pandemic, I've only done some like honestly open mic stuff. Like that's kind of been how I've just been slowly finding my vibe. I know I do have a show coming up, but that will be my like first debut with my solo stuff and a live band. So I'm very.
Is this the June 15th?
June 15th, yeah.
Which is so funny, because I want to promote it, but then this is going to be out after that. So if you came, I hope you enjoyed it.
I hope it was good.
It was a banger, everybody.
Yeah. But yeah, so that will be like my first show really as an artist. But so I'll do my best or worst before. I would say, I mean, do you want me to do either or both?
Both, but just in whatever order.
Okay. Sure. So I'll start with worst, and I think it would just be, I only consider this worst. It wasn't like bad, but it's like I don't remember it too fondly. Is we played, this is back when I had my band in university, but it was before the band was fully formed. So it was my friend and I both on a guitar. And then we just found a random guy at a house party, maybe like 3 weeks before. And he mentioned he played bass. And we're like, you want to play bass with us?
Sure.
And he was like, yeah, okay. And he came and he played with us. So it was an outdoor like beer garden in April. Okay. So it was cold. And we were all in coats. And we were like, our hands were freezing. And we didn't have a drummer. So it was like not a full band, but then it wasn't just guitar. It like had the bass and everything. So it's like, I feel like at a certain point you have to either lean into just acoustic or get a full band, but we were a weird in between.
Right.
And then it was just very strange. And then the bassist was like, hey, I wrote a song. Can we play it? And we're like, yeah, okay, we'll play your song. But like, we didn't know this guy too well.
No, that's bizarre.
It didn't fit our vibe at all, but we wanted to be nice. And we're like, yeah, we'll fit it into the set. And it was like, it wasn't a bad song, but we were all kind of like, all right, now that was that. Now we'll go back to our stuff, I guess. And
right.
I just don't remember that too fondly, honestly, because hands were cold. Music was not fully complete, and it was
Weather can affect things more than people realize, I think. Yeah. Not to mention, Peterborough is what, an hour and a half drive north, or is it 3 hours? I always forget.
It's probably a little bit in between that. It's probably two and a bit, if I had to guess, of Toronto at least. Yeah.
So there's a legitimate weather difference. Like, it could be somewhat mild in April here and still be kind of cold up there at the very least.
I mean, and Trent's right on the river too, so you get all the wind coming off the water.
Yeah, right.
And it could get quite chilly. I remember we played a similar show later, back when we actually had like our proper bassist came into play there, and he took those, the hand warmers, you like shake them to warm them up and then you keep them in your pocket. He did that and then taped it to his bass so he could rest his hand on it while he was playing and keep his hand warm. It was very smart, and we're like, smart. I think I just kept some in my pockets in between songs. I would put them in there, but
exactly. Wow.
But so that was probably the worst.
Okay.
The best. I think the best might be a tie. So I'll say the first one will just be that album release party we did have was so much fun, because we actually put it together. We got such like way more of a turnout than we thought, and it was.
Do you remember where you played?
It was at the Red Dog.
The Red Dog. Okay, is that still open, or did that close?
I think that one's closed.
I think it closed. Anyways.
It's such a good venue. Honestly, both my best shows are at the Red Dog, because we came to just know the like, I guess, artist person, like recruiter there. We would just send him emails and be like, hey, if there's any shows like where we can open for someone, let us know. And then he kind of just became friendly with them. And then when we asked to do an album release party, he's like, yeah, no, you just charge at the door. You can keep 100% of the door stuff, and we'll just take whatever's at the bar. And I was like, wow. Sure, what a system. That's incredible.
Yeah.
We thought it was going to like cost us money to book, and he's like, no, we take profit from the bar, you take profit from the door, and that's it. I'm like, easy.
That also really shows initiative by you guys, though. Like, that's also how I started getting more gigs myself solo, is just you get in with the booker of some smaller place that does occasionally have bands coming through, and then you're just like, hey, I'd love to. No, there's like not an ego about it. You're not saying give me all these headline spots. You're like, if there's a slot opening that needs filling and you need to just like think of someone, think of me. And it actually does lead to shows.
We opened for quite a few bands through that guy, just because he was nice enough to let us do this. And then once we had that relationship, we're like, hey, can we do a show? And he was like, yeah.
Well, you built it up. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was great. And so that was probably one of my best shows, because it was just, just the energy. My whole family like came all the way to Peterborough to see the release show and everything. It was great. The other best show, same venue. We opened for Said the Whale.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
So we had no idea who Said the Whale was.
Sure.
But he was like,
who said the whale?
Who said the whale? But yeah, the guy was like, we can open for Said the Whale. And we're like, yeah, sure. No, any band coming through, that's fine. We're not particular. And then we didn't realize until like a week before, people were like, wait, Said the Whale? Like, exactly. I already bought tickets for that. I didn't realize you were opening for them. And it was that's
crazy.
We didn't realize how big of a deal they kind of were, at least at the time. I think they're still kind of making names. Yeah. But it was like, there was probably a couple hundred people at that show, and we're like, oh, whoa, okay, this is kind of a big deal. And then we got to hang out with the band in the green room downstairs after.
Very cool.
And one of our friends was like, hey, can I like come downstairs with you? I'm such a big fan of them. And we're like, yeah, I guess, come on down, But that was also like, just because it was our first like big show, that was probably one of the best too.
What does downstairs mean? To the green room?
Oh, the green room in the Red Dog. Have you been to the green room there?
No.
Okay, so it's in the basement, and they also use it for sex parties.
Sure.
Yeah. So you'll go down there, and there's like one of those like wooden horses wrapped in like leather, and people like they genuinely used it for sex parties down there.
Whoa.
Yeah, but there was also just like a couch and a table where you could if you felt confident enough, you could sit on and wait for your set.
Wow.
I think most bands just hung out, unless they were like a big band and didn't want to get like bombarded by the crowd. They would just hang out upstairs with everyone else, because no one really wanted to be down there too much. But Yeah,
no, that's interesting though. There's a lot of weird, sort of unique things that I'm sure a lot of people know that, but they don't like fully bubble up to audiences, for example. It just reaches the musicians. They're the only ones who know, for example, like there's a fucking sex thing that happens in the green room, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the first time the guy told us about it, we thought he was like making a joke. He's like, yeah, this is a sex party. That we're like, oh yeah, okay, sure, dude. And then,
you're a blue collar kind of place. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And then later we're like, oh no, there's definitely, this is a sex dungeon down here.
Wow. Well, you could put any bad fans down there if it's a dungeon, I guess.
Oh yeah, I guess.
Just the discomfort of having to be around everything. Mm-hmm. Green rooms is sometimes a little thing that I get to get stuck on. I talked about it in episode 2 as well. Was that the nicest? Well, nicest is a weird thing. Most professional is maybe a better word.
I guess so. I think every other venue I've played in didn't really even have a green room. So I feel like that was probably, I guess, it was probably the most official green room kind of thing.
Very nice. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I would say mostly the same. A lot of venues don't really. It's like a bit of a backspace behind where you go up to the stage sometimes, but sometimes it's just a broom closet.
Yeah, well, exactly.
Filled with brooms. So it's not a green room. Yeah.
This at least was like the full basement, and it was like pretty spacious. I think it had its own bathroom down there. It's like, okay,
I bet it would.
The green room.
I bet it would.
Kind of has to. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the first thing they have to install. Okay, so with that, that's so interesting that you met Said the Whale and didn't have that's another example of just this weird industry, because Said the Whale around the time that you did that, I'm sure were probably pretty huge.
They were, like they had, I know someone told me after that they had like won Junos, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of a big deal.
Exactly. Yeah. But it goes to show you that that's how little even musicians follow some of the bigger industry stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Even with the internet, it's so broken up. What's going on the West Coast is, other than a few things, I have no idea. Right? You can be just totally invested in the scene and never have time for anything else outside of it.
Yeah, no, I'm like, no, so many local Toronto people. Outside of that, really not.
I know, and it can fill all of your time. Just going to their shows and listening and whatever. Well, speaking of music, getting back to your music, I would like to speak about your best song first.
Okay.
What do you think of best song? It doesn't need to be from the same release that you chose the worst.
No, I don't think it would be. I mean, there are some decent songs in there, but I think my best song just has to be I Want to Be Afraid of the Dark. I think it's just it's of all my songs, it's the only one that, maybe not the only one, but the one that works best, just stripped down on its own. You don't need anything else. In the recording, there is a little bit of soft synth comes in and some drums come in at the end, but I can do that one live with just an acoustic guitar and it works. Whereas all the other ones, it kind of works, but not as well. And I think that I feel like to figure out how good a song is, you have to be can it work stripped down to just the bare essentials? And that's the one that can do that the most, I'd say.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I don't know about most. I don't know all of your music equally well, but I know that that song really well because you've played it at the open mic, and I agree. It seems there are some songs that seem complete, even though it's just a voice and acoustic guitar, and other songs where you think, it's a bit naked. It needs some accents or some bells and whistles. I totally agree. It has just a great. It sounds fresh, even though it's not like you're reinventing the wheel with what you're playing or anything. It's just
it's 3 chords the entire time. It doesn't change up at all. It just has the one little riff,
bit of a lick,
3 chords,
and then descending chords, sort of.
Yeah.
I forgot about this one. This is a muscle relaxant for that band member who thinks they're carrying the rest of you. Suffering from aches and pains because you're carrying the rest of them? I gotta play both sides. Then this is for you. Pacifica Pacifica. I've got the inside scoop on an upcoming Dateline episode. Who does it feature? One of Nelly's face band-aids. Where did they go? Who are they with? Whose face are they canoodling? Find out this week. And now the music is kind of sounding a little bit more like People's The Diamond Store. Are you in trouble with your partner? Get them some jewelry, they'll love it. People's.
Yeah. No, but it works so well, and it's just a good example of songwriting where you are just using 3 chords, but it doesn't feel stretched.
Yeah.
Throughout each section, it feels very natural. And some songs you feel like, oh my God, you can feel it's the 270th time you've heard the lick in the song. It doesn't feel that way because you do enough different things with the vocals, at least live when I see it.
Yeah. No, I do tend to do that with that song in particular.
So if it's funny, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh no, it's just like I've played that song for people before, and they think it's like a cover, and I'm like, oh, that's how you know it's good.
Yes, I agree with you.
It's the same. I think. Have you seen the Oasis documentary, Supersonic?
Oh yes, and at the beginning they're like, you didn't write that song.
Yeah, with Noel Gallagher writing "Live Forever."
Right.
And they're like, yeah, what is that? He's like, I wrote it. And they're like, no, but what is it?
Yeah,
you didn't write that. And I'm like, that's how that song feels to me when people do that. I'm like, okay, yeah,
totally.
That's a good one.
That's a good feeling. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what I was going to ask was, if you thought that it sounded good stripped down, why add the accoutrement? Like, because it needs to fit better within the context of the whole album it was on?
I mean, I think kind of that was probably in the back of my mind when I was doing it. I was honestly going back and forth between having 2 different songs as its like influence, its reference, right? Mm-hmm. So one would have been, and this is going to sound obvious because it's kind of a similar name, but I Will Follow You Into the Dark.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Right? Because that song literally is, I don't know, do you know the story behind the song?
Oh, no, I don't.
It wasn't meant to be on the album. They were just between recordings, and he was just sitting in the studio, and he had written the song already, but he was just sitting on a chair, was playing it, didn't know the room mics were still on. And they literally just took that, added a little bit of compression, and that's it. So it's like, it wasn't professionally, like, didn't set anything up. It was literally just caught him playing it, and they put it on, and it's their, like, most popular song. I was like, part of me wanted to do that. And I think I did a little bit of a recording where it was just, I played it and sang at the same time and left it as that. And I did like it. But then the other reference track was Pieces of What by MGMT, which is, if you're familiar, it's on their first album, but it's not one of their like big synth pop hits. It's kind of like, it is more of a guitar based little thing, but it does have some cool stuff happening in it towards the end with the drums coming in. And I think in the end, I kind of like put them back to back. I'm like, I want it to have a little more going on than what it is. When I guess what people listening will have heard it live if they came to our show, but when I'm going to play it live, it's going to have the full band, and I'm going to like, okay, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, that's cool.
If I prefer it otherwise, then maybe next shows I'll make that one just me, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Here's a question for you with the song because that sounds like not just a song you like, but it was told to you it was good just by reactions from other people.
Yeah,
and sometimes that's a barometer. So when you know that about some of your songs or one of your songs, my question is, where do you place it in the set list? And this doesn't give anything away because, again, the show will have happened. But like, do you start out? Is that like, let's presume it's your best punch in a boxing match. When do you save it? Do you save it for near the end or the middle so it doesn't slack, or at the beginning?
I
know nothing about boxing. Sorry.
I think it does depend on the song. If this was, like a lot of people said, like one of my best songs, and it was like punchy, then sure, I'd put it right at the top, I think. But if anyone's familiar with it, it's a slower song.
It's a bit of a bring your lighter out, dance, sway with your partner.
A little bit. Like it picks up a little bit, obviously, but it's definitely one of the slower songs I've written. And I think it would be weird to open up with, but I don't want to necessarily close with that either, because I'd want to close with a bang as well. I think I do keep it towards the end, though.
So maybe there's 10 songs in your set. It's 8, sort of?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Like, okay, we've had some fun. Let's bring it down for a second, and then we'll bring it up for the very end. And
yes.
Probably it. But then, like I said, if my best song, or if I had a song where people were like, we love this song, and it was like very like high energy, I would probably either first or last, depending on how I feel. Yeah.
I agree with you on that. I'm excited for the gig. This is so self-indulgent because this is just going to be after. But yeah, no, it should be good. I'm very interested in hearing some of the. Well, we'll get to it, I guess, quite soon now. But I'm very interested in hearing that song live with the full band. I guess getting slowly into your worst song, which you alluded to, it's on a record that you probably won't be pulling anything from live?
Not anytime soon. I think I could pull some songs from it, but at the moment I have enough songs from my like Josh Van White discography that I can do live. That would be good.
Okay.
I think like there definitely are a couple songs on that other record that I think they're kind of fun, high energy songs that would be neat to do. But yeah, for now, not really.
Okay. So with that out of the way, do you want to... By the way, good that you said Josh Van White and not Joshua Van White, because I've been flipping back and forth about what's the truly correct names.
I know. I
go with Josh?
Josh. I got the Eventbrite thing, and it says Josh Van White, but then it says Joshua Van White in another spot.
On the poster, maybe.
Yeah. Well, then on the poster, like it's on the text in the email I got from Eventbrite. Don't know how it ended up there. But the other thing that's doubly wrong with it is that's not how you spell Joshua for me. It's my parents put an extra H on the end of Joshua, so it's Joshuah.
Oh, it's like after a sipping from a drink, Joshua.
Yeah, Joshua. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. That's new. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people do, and I was considering. And I'll talk about this because it kind of does lead into the other thing.
Sure.
Is I won't mention the artist name of the other one, my other album yet, but I had like a name that was kind of ambiguous. It could be a band, it could be an artist. It wasn't anything specific. But then I wanted to change it, and I think I wanted it to be more personal. You know, I think I fell into a spot where I was like, I like the music I'm doing now. I want it more related to me. And I played around like with the idea of a couple different names. I was just going to do just Josh White, just keep it simple, the two there. But there already is a Josh White and a Jack White, and there's hard. But
you could be Josh White with 2 H's on the end.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The other one was I was like, I could do Joshua White with the H on the end, because that's it's a more unique spelling of it.
Yeah.
That it was unique. Like when I looked it up on Spotify, there was no Joshua White with that H on the end. That said, I wanted something that I would be able to tell people what my name is without having to spell it out.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't want to go Joshua White and make sure you put the H on the end, otherwise it'll be someone else. You know? So I'm like, So then I went with Josh Van White. I'm like, hey, that's all of those. You know how to spell them already. It's simple and concise. And I was like,
and it is your name still. It's not a misspelled version of your, like Josh is something you accept.
Josh is, yeah.
Yeah, right.
But then I don't know if I should say this. It's fine. I don't have Van in my name at all.
Oh, okay. So like an artist type name.
It is an artist name. I took the Van from my grandmother's maiden name.
Whatever. It's part of you got somewhere in your family.
It's in there because it's Dutch, right? And I'm like, okay, I'll take it and put it in there, because then it still has just Josh White, but then Josh Van White, I think it flows well, and then also
it's more unique. Like it will literally it'll come up better in Google searches and stuff.
I've been able to get every like email or social media handle without having to add anything, just Josh Van White, and that's it. Like so it works.
This admin stuff is frustratingly something you should, I'm saying you to the listeners, maybe who don't have a band but want to get into it, you got to think about it. Like a really good example is, I always think about this, is Always, the band Always, but they spelled the W with 2 V's, because think about how much more likely it is to be the first search on Google if it's 2 V's.
Definitely.
Than if you just typed in Always on Google. Yeah. They'd be like page 10, you know?
Yeah. But then also, I think it's like, that one is a little more tough, and it's great that they were able to like make that name for themselves with the 2 V's, because I feel like if you're saying someone, hey, listen to my music, my band's name is Always, then you have to add the like caveat.
That's a good point.
Like, it's actually with 2 V's though.
That's a good point.
I mean, they made it work.
I mean, so sometimes I guess you just are, people just like your music enough that they don't care about the little hassle, the name hassle.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, well then let's get into it. Let's talk about what you think your worst song is.
Okay, so the name I was releasing it under is called Other Infinities.
Okay, cool.
And that's taken from the phrase, some infinities are bigger than other infinities, which I always thought was cool. It's a neat concept. Who said that? Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. I thought it was like a nice, like a genuine, like maybe like some kind of
philosopher or scientist or
something, like something of that. But then I do remember Googling it at some point, and it's in the book The Fault in Our Stars.
Well, whatever. A good quote's a good quote, you know?
I don't think John Green invented it. I don't think.
Right.
But it is in there. And I was like,
okay, gotcha.
Is it attributed to him? Like, is that where like that got in my head? I never read the book or the movie, but it must have gotten in my head somehow. And I like the idea of like some infinities are bigger than other infinities.
Yeah, sure.
So then I liked the name Other Infinities for a while, and I put out the album. The album's called Smaller Than Some, which fits into the Other Infinities
phrasing.
Song. Yeah. And the song is called Great Expectations.
Is that a literary reference or no?
It wasn't intended to be, but I understand it is like a Dickens thing.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
that I do remember I went through a handful of different titles for that song. And here's what I'll say about the song is when I originally wrote it, it had like a completely different set of lyrics. The melody and the guitar was the same and everything. But then I was like, when I was going to record the album, like, you know what? I don't really like the theme I was going with the lyrics. I think it was originally like the premise of it was like having a friend in school that gets popular and suddenly you can't hang out anymore. And that was like a much more like, I was younger when I wrote it. And I don't think I actually experienced that too much to a degree, but I was kind of like, this is the character and it's kind of maybe relatable to people going to school. And then I wanted to change it to something more applicable to my life. And I don't mind. I still think the lyrics are pretty good. I like the music. I like the original written music of it.
Yeah.
The biggest fault that happened with it is I wanted it to have the original, like, it's a nice little, like, pretty guitar lick, like a finger picky thing. And then it goes a little, like, gets, like, strummy. But then when it got to the strummy bit, and I had a full recording of that version, but then I made that other song on that album that I really liked, and it was very synth heavy. And I was really into Of Montreal at the time, and Of Montreal, they jump around from genres like all over the place.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think I could do something like that. So it does start out with that like pretty guitar pick kind of thing, or like finger picking. But then when it picks up, it goes very like synth and like dancey.
Okay.
And I just don't think, looking back on it, I don't think it works super well. There is also the fact that the production on that album entirely wasn't great, just because not the production, the mixing on it and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
I see what you're saying.
Well versed in it at the time. I think I've come a long way since then, and I'm like, okay, looking back on it, I'm like, yeah. But
I think a ton of artists are growing more publicly than they ever have, as in you're gonna hear some of your favorite artists, if you go back to the earliest stuff they've released publicly, learn how to mix.
Yeah,
they will
true,
actually sound better production wise a little bit further in their career, which I think is pretty unique.
That is true. Like that has to be something that's only come about in the last 15 20 years.
Exactly.
Older bands, you had a studio. Your debut album sounded pretty clean still.
There was a bare minimum at the unless you're like underground punk or underground hip hop or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
There was that minimum. Yeah, so it's like, and that is a good point actually. You could go through my university band, then into this album, then into that weird EP I put out, the instrumental one, and then into my even my last album and now my singles that I put out this year. And there's a very huge range of difference there.
I think that's I think that's a unique bit. Someone's going to do something weird with that data once they collect all that.
You can see which frequencies suddenly start getting like cut out and used more.
Exactly.
Like, oh, this is what people like to hear.
Oh, that'll happen for sure. And then we'll all just be like, I freaking love 5,600 hertz. That's the best shit.
Oh, that high mid. The best.
Well, so we talked a bit about this earlier more generally, and it sounds like you think it's possible to revive some of your older songs from this project live. Is this one that you would?
I think I would. I would not do the transition into the dancey, synthy stuff.
Would there still be a transition? Like, you'd keep that structure?
I think so, yes. But it would end up being a lot closer to the structure on I Want to Be Afraid of the Dark, where it's like it does pick up, you get that extra layer of stuff going on, but then it doesn't go too wild.
Right, it doesn't seem like a different song.
Well, exactly. I think this song genuinely would work well as just like a solo acoustic song. But for some reason, I really wanted to make it suddenly do that shift into dancey stuff. I think it's because I had that other song that is a lot more synthy and like, ooh, I could make it do something more like this, and it just didn't work.
Well, maybe this song will just serve a little bit like that transition project period. Like, okay, it didn't work out on this, but then an album later, you're going to try something that approximates that same structure, maybe, and it'll go well, and it wouldn't have gone well without trying this first.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with this one particular song, is it really encapsulates how much of a transition I was trying to make for that whole album. In that it's like this, you can see I'm starting out, it's kind of like a soft rock, almost like verging on folky kind of thing. And then I'm like, oh, but I want to make fun, upbeat dance kind of synth indie stuff. And it really just comes in. And I think the problem is it has like a drop almost in the song. Ooh. Where it's not like, it doesn't have like a slow build up into it. It's like kind of finger picky the whole time. And then after like, and it's kind of like, I think it has like a synth riser suddenly comes in like, boom. And it comes in being like, with like a 4 on the floor and some synths doing like a thing, and the guitar suddenly is very like almost funk guitar.
I hope people
weird.
Are excited to listen to this in a few minutes at the end of the podcast, because you piqued my interest, frankly.
I know we talked about this off camera, I think at Open Mic the other week, but I'm like, every other episode I've heard, I'm like, no, these songs are good what these people are talking about, and with this one I'm still like, no, my song is the worst though.
That's like, I think we'll see what comes out between now and I think it's a classic thing. It's always just the baggage the artist brings. They have context that none of us have context. I don't know if I've said it in an interview that aired yet, but it's like I related a bit to paintings. If you and I go look at a painting, we go, they successfully painted a dog. That looks like a dog. Good. They are thinking the little fur on the ear has a little tip up. I screwed that up. The dog's back left leg looks fucking awkward. But you and I are just passing it like, that's a cute dog. You crushed it.
Dog.
That's how true, most people feel about these songs. It's like, did you create a synth song? Does it sound like synth? You nailed it.
Did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing just about production and like mixing all together, is I'll spend so much time tweaking it, like going back and forth. I'm like, the average listener will not know the difference of what I spent 3 weeks kind of slaving over.
You're slaving over a half second that has like a weird buzz. And I'm
like, no, the release is like quarter of a second too long on that synth at the very end. I need to...
I know, exactly. And you don't even know in the context of the entire song when they listen, if they'll even notice the synth until like the 5th listen.
Right? Yeah.
Some people just hear it and they're like, that's the chorus, out of their head. That's it.
Some people hear songs as complete songs and not individual instruments playing at the same time, which is crazy.
It's just absurd. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I do it too sometimes, and unless I'm working on a song, then every other song I listen to, I'm hearing each production thing individually. And I'm like, oh, they did that there. I could use that for this particular song. I think it would work well.
If you're in that zone of either creating or mixing, I'll even sometimes go out, and sometimes the way a truck will creak will be melodic, and you're so your antenna's up to hear anything. You're like, oh, I could use that creak melody. Actually, gives me an idea for the end of this chorus. Yeah,
I'll listen to a demo while going out for a walk, and I'll hear, and then I hear like a radio playing. I'm like, oh, what if I had like just random noises happening in the background right there? Because that kind of sounded cool.
It's such a weird, delicate thing of like, to somebody, it'll just sound absurd. But then if you pull it off the right way, it sounds like a genius idea.
Yeah.
So I know. Well, I feel like I've had you for about the time that we said. It's 11:46.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce the song, reintroduce your name, and just say maybe thanks for listening, and also thanks for coming to our show, hopefully?
Oh, yeah. So my name is Josh Van White, is where you can hear most of my music that I consider the good stuff. But this is Other Infinities, and the song is called Great Expectations. And thanks for coming to our show on the 15th. It really meant a lot that you guys joined us.
Okay, thanks a lot, Josh.
Great, yeah.
It's just the way that you see. It's not about reality, but who you are inside. Sure, you've come this far and you've had a few scars, but your horse is so high. You were filled with praise back in your early days, but it's still up in your head that you could do better than the hero in leather in every book that you've read. Was holding you back, and it's a matter of fact that you're better than that town. So you got away and found a place to stay. You can finally wear your crown. You got older and you shifted, got bolder and you lifted the curtain to the of the world. Now you're in the big city, but it's nothing pretty when you find yourself alone. Thought the world was yours, but that's run its course, and you can't be crawling back home. On a day, because you never seem to find your way to all the things you already had, everything that's driving you mad, all the things you already had, all the things you already had. a platter, but it doesn't seem to matter, 'cause it's got you feeling sad. In a world with it all, you could fly, but you fall past every chance that you've had.